Good morning, everybody. We got a lot of news in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes yesterday, and I'm going to be honest, we're not actually going to talk about most of it. We'll be doing that later tonight on Zeta Protocol with Mr. Pico Burrito. But what I do want to talk about does involve some of the updates that are happening with the new ships and the new era and everything else. There is a glaring omission in the game that is 3 years running at this point, and it is frustrating because I've given CG quite a lot of leeway and clearance and really great vibes and belief over the last year and a half to 2 years in the idea that they know where they're going with each aspect of the game. And to an extent, while I do think that that is true, the fact that we are getting these two ships right now without an answer to this other territory battles related problem kind of gives me the idea that when Rise of the Empire was first released, they didn't really have a full plan. And I know I am being intentionally vague here, and we will talk about it very, very, very briefly right after the intro. Right. So territory battles is going on right now, coincidentally, with all of the announcements coming to the game. And the one thing that I am noticing here, we're actually going to jump over to the internet. We do have this Rogue One ship that is coming out next week. It is going to be a profundity lifter, which I mean, I thought it was going to be the Fonder Hallcraft for the longest time. I guess it does make sense that we don't want Luthen to be a pilot right now while not everybody has him. Um, so I'm going to say that I was half right. But we are also getting a B Wing on top of that. And we don't know where that's going to fit into the meta. Is that also going with Profundity? Is that going to give us more access to Home 1 as a ship as well? You'll notice that there is a call for reinforcements, cooldown reduction similar to the Phoenix one. So are we going to see two ships going with Profundity and two ships going with Home 1? And what this kind of made me think about yesterday, jumping back to the game, is that 3 years running, that's right, Rise of the Empire came out December of 2022, so we're like just under 3 years. But at 3 years running, we still don't have an answer to the Geonosis fleet mission. 3 years running. And there are strategies, right? So there are two strategies out there that I am aware of that can clear this mission, though it is incredibly difficult and incredibly RNG dependent. And the win rates on both based on the two people that came up with them or found them or at least championed them are around 25 to 30%. So for those of you who are interested and aren't aware of those things, we have this first strategy that is brought to you by Kazgul, who is a creator that exists primarily in the text, Reddit, and Substack space. It involves using the Executrix and the Mark VI kind of in the similar way to what we do on the first battle, Mustafar, for those of you that use the Mark VI trick of kind of using the ship to tank. But again, the strategy is not reliable. It kind of exists on a hope and a prayer. The other strategy comes to us from our very own Bit Dynasty, right? And this involves the Leviathan and a little bit more of a traditional Leviathan fleet. And you can find both of those strategies either on YouTube or even in our territory battles library on the Slice of Otagunga Discord. But I will stress, like I said before, that those strategies have about a 30% win rate. So it is, it's guilds can't rely on that. Now, 3 years later, many guilds are existing in a space where they don't even need this battle anymore. I know that my guild, when we first started maxing phase 2, which we will do later today, we needed everybody to try that mission, and I think that every TB, maybe 2 or 3 people would ever be able to beat it. And we're talking about players in the end game that do have high relic ships. But we're now at a point where I don't even bother trying it. I did try it today just because I want to show the majority of my guild that I do put in effort in those first 2 days of territory battles. But as a player in the end game, and I think the lower end of the end game, you have the upper echelon of whale guilds, your maws, your caws, your gauntlet guilds. We don't exist there. We exist just a little bit further down. We have had no problem with this planet for about 8 to 12 months at this point. So I know that there are guilds way below us that are not having problems either, right? So 3 years into this game mode, we still have a mostly unbeatable combat mission, and we still have seen nothing that allows us to more reliably take this on. Now, last year when Punishing One came out, there were a lot of people, myself included, who were speculating that maybe that was going to be the answer here. It certainly wasn't. Obviously, you really do need Razor Crest to be able to use the executor in any meaningful functioning way, and you can't do that on Geonosis, right? So what's going on here, right? Why are we put into a position where a phase 2 planet, so an earlier planet, is holding back a lot of those mid to late game guilds from being able to push up their star counts meaningfully with another, 500,000? So another roughly 25, am I doing my math correctly? 5 times 10, so 10 people, 5 million times 5, 25 million in combat missions, making their lives easier. Now, if this was like the Death Star mission and the Death Star mission were unbeatable, I would understand that, right? I would get that because the first 2 years, CG never expected anybody to get there. They had a 4 or 5 year plan where this would start to open up as players were hitting it. But that's not the case. And hell, if we go over to Hoth, which is a phase 6 planet, this combat mission, this fleet mission, is probably one of the easiest ones in the entirety of Rise of the Empire. Now, there is a solution. And CG kind of gave us half of the solution already in the update notes that they provided us yesterday, or I should say the smattering of different posts that they gave us yesterday. But yesterday, if we were to pat back over onto the internet, yesterday CG also gave us this upcoming Leviathan change. And in this upcoming Leviathan change, it says the unique will now have this added clause: Galactic Republic, Jedi, and rebel enemies can't assist or attack again if their attack is targeting a Sith. Just throw separatists in there. There's no reason not to. The unique will now have the added Galactic Republic, Jedi, rebel enemies, and separatists. Malevolence is already not beating Leviathan. Malevolence does jack shit against Leviathan. There is nothing that Malevolence can do against the Leviathan at all. Throw in the clause. That makes it so that your Leviathan can be used in day 2 right here, right? That makes it so that it can be used right here on this planet. And those Geonosians are not going to spam attack anymore. And it allows players who have invested in the top current fleet to be able to take on a mission relatively easily, but not relatively easily compared to the rest of the TB, because the rest of the TB honestly is relatively easy. Now, the counterpoint to this is, well, Egnards, what if they add another separatist capital ship in the future? The way that I see it is that we can approach or broach that topic when we get to that. Right? We can change something at that point based on the if, ands, or buts of a capital ship that we are unlikely to get anywhere in the next couple of years, considering that there are only 5 droid slash separatist ships in the game at all. This clause can be changed. The clause can be taken out later, but then added into the node itself so that it only affects that Geonosian node, right? Not a big deal. But right now, we are in a space where I, as a creator, as a person, as somebody within the community that has the reputation of thinking logically, I have given CG the credit to say, hey, they have a plan and they've been building this plan, and we maybe don't always understand the plan, but clearly they're working a year ahead. Clearly they're working 2 years out, and they kind of have a mostly good idea of what's going to happen overall. And then we get this. Right now, is this a big issue? No, it's not. Um, I know that there's a lot of news, and again, we will talk about that later on Zeta Protocol. This is definitely not a big issue. It is not something that I would have broached in the past, but given that the clause is already being added to the game, given that Leviathan is already getting this change, given that we are seeing new fleet assets being added to Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes overall, and not just stagnating from punishing one literally a year ago, it is a topic that is worth broaching. It is a topic that will benefit a large amount of the player base on their fleet that they started unlocking 2 years ago, right? And not to pad this any further, so I will say, I would like to know what your thoughts here on Geonosis and on that fleet battle, and if you have found something that works better than the two strategies that I have been made aware of. Please let me know. But I'm pretty sure that that is all that exists. So with that said, peace out and have a great rest of your day.